Hello and welcome to this session about communications on sensitive issues. My name is Irina, I'm a communication specialist with a background in TV journalism and the experience in human rights and communications for the United Nations and civil society. In this 20-minute video you will find out what human rights issues are sensitive, who is the boss when it comes to human rights storytelling, how can a celebrity help you tell a sensitive story, is humor allowed? We will go through some great examples of communications materials and learn how to test your ideas and outputs. So what are sensitive issues? There is no official definition as what is sensitive for the one may not be sensitive for the other. When talking about human rights, everything can be sensitive, especially in authoritarian countries. Let's try, however, to make a rough classification of sensitive human rights issues. First, sensitive issues are those which polarize the society. For example, communications around equal rights for LGBTQI people is usually very sensitive. Second, issues can become sensitive when traditions, including religious traditions in a certain country, contradict human rights principles. Women's rights and gender equality are very sensitive, for example, in Central Asia. Themes that touch upon violence are sensitive: torture, sexual abuse, rape. Political tensions, situations of armed conflict, national pride and patriotic feelings can make things sensitive. Should war heroes face trials and go to prison if they committed crimes? The list can go on, but these are the issues which we are going to focus on today. Storytelling and statistics are powerful tools to communicate on sensitive issues. Facts will work when numbers and comparisons are easy to remember. For example, police ignore 90% of complaints on bride kidnapping. Every third woman in the world faces domestic violence. 60 million people are displaced, and the reference to the Second World War in this photo gives these numbers additional weight. Wrap your statistics in a video, for example. Even giving sad and disturbing facts, you can be creative and use positive energy, positive messages, words that empower and give hope, music that is dynamic. Watch and compare these two short videos that we will now play. Both have been produced by the United Nations Free and Equal campaign on LGBTQI equality. Compare music and colors. Pay attention to the words on the screen and see which of the two makes you hopeful and motivated. Storytelling is your best friend in communication on sensitive issue. There is a special video on storytelling on Freedom Lab, so go watch it. For sensitive topics, the most important is to give voice to the people, to torture survivors, to women who suffer domestic abuse, to a lawyer or a journalist who are facing threats just for doing their job. Let them tell their story, speak with them, not on their behalf. When it comes to sensitive human rights communications, it's very different from media reporting. While journalists most often will look for a scandal, a sensation, more tears, more graphic details, human rights communication is, first of all, about empathy and respect. People who are in the center of your story should be in control of the final product you make. They are your editors and even your censors. When I was working for the UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Ukraine, I was making a video about torture survivors. A man, a victim of torture and arbitrary detention, agreed to speak to us. The interview was very emotional. He cried many times. In the beginning and also in the process, we told him that anytime he can take a break, anytime he can even change his mind and refuse to tell us his story. But I felt that this conversation was also important for him, so we made it till the end. I have a background in TV journalism, so when I was editing the piece, I started it with 4 or 5 seconds of this man crying. Every media person will tell you it's a good start. Draws attention, triggers emotions. So when I finished, I sent the final product to my interviewee, as he is in charge. And the only thing he asked me to remove was these 4 or 5 seconds with him crying. "This makes me weak," he said, "and I'm strong." Of course, I removed this piece, and I think I shouldn't have put it there in the first place. 2 conclusions from this example. First, human rights communicators should empower. Second, people whose voice you are bringing are in charge. One photo says more than 1,000 words. It is a cliché, and yet it is true. Look at these photos by an Italian photographer published by The Guardian. As the article explains, the photographer investigates double taboo of homosexuality and old age in Italy. These are intimate portraits of gay men and lesbians between 60 and 90 years old. These photos show how simple life scenes can create warm and family-like atmosphere. This project is an inspiration. It is about love, isn't it? And love is a terrible thing to hate. Raising the issue through a human story is a classic and great tool. But what are other ways to communicate on sensitive issues, to change attitudes and behaviors, to fight for human rights-based and non-discriminative policies? One of them, especially if we want to reach a younger audience, is computer games. In Kyrgyzstan, civil society created an online game, Swallows Spring in Bishkek. It is an interactive story about a young Kyrgyz woman whose best friend was kidnapped for a forced marriage and her parents refused to save their daughter from the kidnapper's house. While raising a very serious matter, the game does it in a positive manner with many joyful moments along the script. As its creators explain, the game is fiction, but it is based on many real accounts of kidnapped women and girls. The ultimate purpose of the game is to break the wall of silence about bride kidnapping in Central Asia, to empower women to stop this practice and to bring the kidnappers to account. Another way of telling a story, or many stories, is through celebrities who will bring the voice of people. Let's look at the 3 good examples from Ukraine and from Russia. 2 pieces from the Committee Against Torture, an independent Russian NGO currently banned there as a foreign agent. To draw attention to the use of torture, Russian TV anchors, actors and other celebrities engaged in a video project that is called Russian School of Yoga. They describe real torture techniques as if they were asanas. The video is made in pastel colors, the presenters are smiling. The process of watching is not traumatic, you don't see beatings, blood or bruises, but the message does come across. One more video from the same organization has cartoon elements in it. In the video, Russian celebrities read extracts from police reports, where police officers explain why detainees have physical injuries. The cartoons are used to show the absurdity of the reports and ridicule them. In one extract, for instance, the report says that a man received multiple injuries during interrogation because he was hitting his head to a shelf when standing up to go to a toilet. In 2018, for the annual campaign 16 Days Against Gender-Based Violence, the UN in Ukraine produced a video where male Ukrainian singers read accounts of women who suffered domestic violence. The campaign was under the hashtag #HearMeToo, with a message that victims of violence are often ashamed to talk about what happened to them, so everyone else should stand with them and help get their voice heard. According to a point made in the online discussion at the website newtactics.org, humor can break down the paralyzing impact of fear and make scary monsters more human. Indeed, humor and comedy can be a good gateway to taboo topics. They can make communication less traumatic, trigger laughter. Yet, one has to be very careful with humor and avoid sarcastic and sardonic approaches when communicating on sensitive issues. There is a risk to reinforce a stereotype we want to disprove through humor and irony. One more example from my experience. For one campaign, we collected short interviews with answers and comments from LGBTQI people in Ukraine. In one interview, a young woman was wearing a t-shirt with the print Sodomia. This is to ridicule a biblical reference to Sodom and Gomorrah and a related stereotype that same-sex relationships are sinful. While this sarcastic print is clear to people who work in human rights, it may be offensive in a communication product that aims to initiate open social dialogue and to promote tolerance. While the interview was very good, we decided not to include it in the final products of the campaign. Some human rights campaigns have a shocking element in them. Amnesty International campaigns from the last decade are a good example of this. In 2008 in Hong Kong, Amnesty people were selling for donations hangman gingerbread cookies. The purpose of the campaign was to attract attention to death penalty. Here we see a birthday cake with a photo that you would not usually put on a cake. This was to mark the 60th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Its purpose was to emphasize that much more needs to be done. To be fair, shocking campaigns were mostly used in the past. The new era is much more about positive attitude and positive messages, showing what human rights defenders are for rather than against. This new hope-based approach does not only make communications more human, it has a real impact on the advocacy success. Test, test, test. This is not only about corona pandemic. Before you make your product public, test it. The best testing has at least two stages. The first is the community test. If your material is around Black Lives Matter, send it to a person of color. If your product is about LGBTQI issues, share it in a relevant group or send to people you know. If you're making a cartoon about torture prevention, send your final draft to a psychologist who works with torture survivors or to torture survivors themselves. This would be the first stage, the ethical test. The second stage is the audience test. If you have the luxury of time and money to conduct a proper research in focus groups, great, go for it. If not, send your material to any group of people outside civil society sector. Show it to your family members, to your teachers, to your fitness trainer, to your neighbors. If we don't test our products, everything can be sensitive and the cost can be very high. I will give an example not from a human rights, but from a fashion business world. In 2019, a luxury brand found itself in the midst of a big scandal due to the design of their sweater. An outcry in social media saw a black face in their jumper and accused the company of racism. It was hard to see how a small thing put in danger everything we believe, said the company's CEO as quoted by Washington Post. Indeed, devil is in the details. Pay attention to the details and test your creative ideas. Human rights defenders around the globe continue their relentless fight against injustice, discrimination and attacks on freedoms. To win this battle and to succeed in your advocacy, the best language you can use is the language of hope, support, love and empowerment. Positive and hope-based approach is the most effective way to gain public support to change behaviors and policies. It is now widely believed that the most productive way to advocate for human rights protection is to advertise humanity, justice and equality.